the Red Chair. We're incredibly excited to be a part of the Kidscreen Summit. I'd like to thank Jocelyn and the entire Kidscreen team for this great experience. I know not all of you know about the Children's Media Association, so I just wanted to take a moment to share with you a little bit about us. We are a nonprofit industry organization working across the kids and family media landscape. Our mission has 3 core principles. We want to inspire you by sharing industry innovators, rule breakers, and industry luminaries so that we can inspire you on your journey and your career. We want to inform you. There's so much information out there that impacts the work that we do, so we do everything we can from sharing insights, industry reports, anything that we can do in terms of thought leadership to share information with you in a condensed way so that you can add it to what you're doing in your work. But the thing that we love to do the most is we love to find fun and exciting ways to connect you. Everything that we do is really about bringing this community together so that we can do our best work. The ways that we do that, we have online and in-person events. We have amazing workshops that are 4 to 6 week intensives where you can learn a new skill. Then we have an amazing mentorship program, which is open right now. So if anyone would like to be a mentor or a mentee, go to our website. And we have an amazing research and insights team that takes all the thought leadership on key topics, distills it down, and gives it to you in a format that you can apply to your work. But more than anything, we want to be a trusted resource. We want to be your cheerleader. We want to be in the corner cheering for everything that you do all the way throughout your career. Because we believe that if you're inspired, if you're informed, and you're connected, we collectively do our best work for kids and family. So without further ado, let's start the Red Chair, Amy Friedman and Angela Santomero. Thank you.
How many people have been to a Red Chair event before? Okay. I'm going to call that a third. So you know what's about to happen. I'll go pretty quick through the origin story for those that have not been here. Basically, for the more than 25 years that I worked at Nickelodeon, I had these fabulous, bright red, egg-shaped chairs, and they swiveled, and they were extremely comfortable. And as you can imagine, over the years, they became the locus for incredible, profound work conversations. What also happened is that they became the locus of incredibly profound personal conversations. And that is the inspiration for this, and always has been. It's that our real lives and our work lives inform each other, they braid together, they deepen each other. And so the structure of this interview has always been the same from day one, which is 20 minutes about life, 20 minutes about work, 20 minutes of Q&A, so start thinking, and then we drink. There is something different about this year, and that is, if you've been here before, you know that these are not the real Red Chairs. We know. Those are stuck in a warehouse in the LA superstorm. And so Susie Dominic, who you just saw, and her team, 2 days ago, they ran to IKEA, they put these chairs together. Angela and I think they are perfect because they're kind of like if the Red Chair and the thinking chair had a baby, these would be them. And so today we are going to start at the end, which is to say that we usually have this interview and everybody feels so full of love and appreciation that they applaud. But we are going to start with an applause, but don't do it yet, because I want to be very specific about what we are appreciating about this woman right here to my left, Angela Santomero, because I do think we can lose sight of the innovation that this person has created. I believe that this person, Angela, has really, really changed our industry and has changed the sector and has changed how we feel about preschoolers and has changed how we feel about research and where kids belong in the process. Most importantly, I think Angela and all the work that she and her team, some of whom are here, have done is they have modeled what it looks like when the absolute best creative and the absolute best curriculum and the absolute best business happens. Money is good, kids. Like, money is great. And that all that money goes back into the sector and feeds all the other parts of the sectors and gives us our jobs. So now you can clap for Angela and thank you for our jobs. Angela and I have known each other for 35 years, and we're going to try to get around that to give you a good interview. I'd like to start at the very beginning. Let's roll back the time. I would love you to share where you come from and who you come from.
First of all, thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
You look great.
I really tried not to cry, but thank you. I come from the Bronx. Woo!
Boogie down, Bronx.
Between Bronx and then moving to Jersey, I've got a lot of chutzpah. I grew up on Fish Avenue in an apartment where the teenager, she lived upstairs, loved her. She was probably about 7. And my dad was a math teacher, junior high 45, who found that his students weren't doing really well in math and realized that they couldn't read. And so he had to start integrating reading curriculum into math, which I think that story has always stayed with me.
Did he get pushback for that?
Oh yeah, like crazy pushback until he was like, watch, like look at the fact that they know their concepts, they can't score on these tests, and now they can read, and here they go. So,
is your dad a renegade?
Little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Mama?
She's this powerhouse who always wanted to go to college, didn't, wanted to be a doctor, didn't. So she was always interested in everything that we were doing and worked in an endodontist's office and ended up running both offices and very much loved in that arena.
Was she fabulous looking?
Yeah. Well, she was one of those like always ask you to wear lipstick anytime you would
You did
see
her proud today.
I did her
Yeah.
proud. So it was always the red lipstick. Yeah, she was definitely a very, very charismatic, Cosmo drinking woman.
You told me something very moving about the red lipstick, and I'm wondering if you feel comfy sharing.
Yeah, so she died recently, and we gave out little red tubes of lipstick to everybody at the memorial.
I asked Andy Yateman this last year. He's sitting right here. What was the dinner table like? What was the Santomero? Actually, it was the
Capobianco.
Capobianco dinner table like.
So my father was a teacher, so 5 o'clock was dinner, and we all sat around at 5 o'clock for dinner, and that was when conversations would happen, and it was just a very important time. But Sunday dinners were our like major dinners. That's when we would go over the bridge, because now we have moved to Jersey, and we'd have dinner with my mother's parents, and then we would pretend we did not have dinner and have dinner with my father's parents. And do that all over again. So it was a very long day.
What was served at dinner one?
Pasta and pasta. Which the second time was pasta, and then the roast came out after that. And then on the way home, this is ridiculous to even admit, we would go to White Castle on the way home.
We're going to move forward in time in a moment, but curious, what was the household message?
So many. Don't come home pregnant. Always wear lipstick, which I said that already. And then don't marry too young and make more money than your husband. Me and my sister. So did that, but also married young. So defied a few things.
But the lipstick is here.
The lipstick is here,
it's good.
and
I feel like I'm concentrating on your looks, and I don't mean to do that because I was about to say you're really fabulous, but you happen to be beautiful, but I really mean like you're fabulous. You're large and in charge, and I'm curious what that looked like in middle school.
I was an observer. I always say I'm an introverted extrovert for work, right? And so I would be in the moment. I would observe. I would listen. I was student council. I was the cheerleader. I wanted to be all of those things, but I was definitely somebody who would kind of sit back and let others lead until I was ready. And then I think it was the film club in 7th grade that kind of got me all excited about this media industry. They gave everybody a camera who was in the film club, right? And we were 12. And so that was just powerful. And all of a sudden, and this was so funny to find it, I was written by, created by, starring. And so I did my own movie, Me, and it was a horror film, which I will never watch anything scary, but it's called Don't Open the Door.
Don't open the door. Give us the log line.
Oh,
what was going on there?
Kids were missing all over school, but who did it? And you can't go over, and if you open the door, then you disappear. No one would believe the kids. They had to believe the kids. It was always about giving kids a voice. They
Got it.
had to believe the kids, and then that's how it happened.
You said that's when you sort of came into your own. Was that the plan? If you asked you what you wanted, was it like, I want to go into...
Oh, yeah. I totally got that bug. That was very exciting. Very much control.
But you ended up in this sort of melange when you were 14 that
Yeah.
kind of changed your life.
Well, it's like don't come home pregnant, but then my mother did and had an oopsie baby. So I was 14 when my little brother was born. So I was always the babysitter. I was always around kids. I had an Excel chart to keep track of all my babysitting jobs. But then my brother was born, and it was like child development 101, like right in front of me. Took his first steps to me, talked first words. We were around everything. And I think that was a huge impact impact in terms of marrying that with.
And what was he watching?
Well, so funny. I was a Mr. Rogers kid, right? So I talk a lot about Fred Rogers, but I sat so close to Fred Rogers. Rob watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I interacted and talked to Mr. Rogers about my feelings. He interacted and got up and was like kicking and, doing the whole thing with the screen. But that stuck with me too, I think.
When you went off to college, were you clear, like that it was this very specific thing that like child development, entertainment?
I don't think I knew exactly what that was all going to come into, but I realized I could do more in communications and learn everything about that and kind of do that path as a minor. I was doing child development and psychology. I was working at the Child Development Center with preschoolers and kind of bringing it all together. And it was somebody in my psychology club who said they were going to work for Sesame Street in the research department when I was like, that's a job. Like, what is that?
And where did you go to college?
I went to Catholic University in Washington, D.C., which the number one reason that we all went was because we didn't get into Georgetown.
You met Greg.
I did. I met my husband there, although I'd made fun of everybody who was there for an MRS degree. And then sophomore year, I met Greg.
That's young.
That is young. My mother was not happy.
And did you know, was it like bam, boom, like wow?
So true, it was. And so much so, Sappy, Sappy, Mushy Gushy, if anyone really knows me, I wrote out the lyrics to the song Out of the Blue by Debbie Gibson. I never quite gave it to him, thank God, because he was, Ramones and whatever. But yeah, it was like, oh, that was it.
He's a football player, right?
A football player, which, and then I would find him like on campus painting, and like just so he had that really kind of cool mix of things. Italian football player who painted. Is he be happy that I said that? I don't know.
He's not here. He's never going to
okay.
know. He'll never watch the tape
Right.
either. I have a suspicion. Okay, first job.
First job. So I wanted,
first work experience.
Well, I wanted to work at Sesame Street, so I literally went right over there.
How many people when they grew up or who wanted to work at Sesame Street? How many people like that? That's what they thought they were getting. Same. How many people got jobs there first? Not bad. Yeah.
Tom, of course.
Everybody I know either thought they wanted to work there, worked there. How many people have ever worked at Sesame Street in this room? Yeah, nice. Okay.
We hate you. No, just
Okay.
kidding.
So that did not happen for you. You
No.
did not get that job.
No, I remember literally holding the phone with the phone cord and crying about it. And I interviewed 3 times for 3 different positions with Dr. Valeria Lovelace and did not get the job. I was very upset. But of course, when a door closes, there's the window that opens. But I went over and was an intern at Noyes and Laybourne, which at the time I didn't realize Kit Laybourne, who owned the production company, is married to Jerry Laybourne, who was the pioneer of Nickelodeon, the first president creator of Nickelodeon.
All of our mentors.
Jerry Laybourne. Yeah, so that was an amazing first foray in production, and Eureka's Castle was their first preschool show, so I worked a lot on that.
And was it a paid position?
Oh, no, but they said that it was going to be at first, and then it wasn't, and I was still like, I need to do this, I have to do this. So I worked at TGI Fridays as a waitress. Lots of flair.
You had the buttons.
All the buttons, all the tip tray.
What was your tip tray?
designs. It was Monopoly money that Greg and I cut up.
And were you an excellent waitress?
No, I scored really well on the test. There's a test. I scored really well on the test, and I was the worst waitress that I could not even go to lunch at Fridays after my shift. I couldn't afford it.
I know you. I think you're very smart. I think you're very organized. What was so hard for you about waitressing?
I don't. I did use this story to get me the job at Nickelodeon. I'm proud of that because I did talk about the multitasking and the stress, but to keep a smile on your face and to try to call the drinks and the food, and I figured it out, but I did it in my own unconventional way, but I was still terrible.
I too was a terrible waitress. Yeah, it's very hard for certain people, including
very
me.
hard for certain people.
Okay, so you are this unpaid intern. Where was the graduate school plan?
Yep, I was leaving in September for University of Pennsylvania. I was going to study with Dr. Brian Sutton-Smith on play development. I got to go to a research session for Eureka's Castle with Nickelodeon and was introduced to the department, and there was a position open there. Kit Laybourne made a phone call. I did an interview, and I got the job. It was MTV Network, so it was MTV, VH1, and Nickelodeon. So I deferred enrollment at UPenn and ended up going to Teachers College because that was in New York.
Gotcha. And this job was the one. I met you there. You saturated yourself with research. Can you share what you learned, how it affected you?
Oh my God, I loved it. I loved every second of it. I was there in the research department for over 5 years. But when we would moderate, they hadn't yet really talked to the youngest. Big Nick was huge, and we would talk to older kids, but the little ones, it was really hard. And there was one time where they were asking the kids to rate. These are 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, asking them to rate. Well, what do you think about the pilot? What do you think about the show? And they all gave it a 4 or a 5, and everyone was depressed and, thinking
Wait, they were doing numerical?
Numerical, like 0 to 10. Like 10 was the best, and everyone gave it a 4 or 5, and everyone was upset. And I said, well, let's ask them why, because I'm 4, because I'm 5. It had nothing to do with the show. It was just who they were. And I was like, let's play. This is the, amazing thing about Nickelodeon. They allowed us to play. And so I was able to do the next kind of session where I would go in and be behind the one-way mirror and play with the kids. And what that enabled me to do as part of research was to be in the middle of all of the new businesses that were starting, like Nick Jr. Magazine or Nick Magazine or the Nick Jr. content. So it was a great place to be. I loved it.
And people started to use you? People started to invite you in?
I had to talk about why Barney was cool or successful, right? Like, what is it? So I would consistently talk about, and I would give notes on things, on scripts, things that we kind of broadened what we were doing in research at the time.
Got it. So now you're on the path. You have this corporate job.
Yep.
Then what happens?
Then I was giving notes, and I was working with other producers within the company, and Beth Young, my boss, showed me the org chart, and she's like, I don't know where to put you because you're not really doing. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And I realized that I could go back to school in one semester and finish all of my classes because it took me, embarrassingly enough, 5 years to finish my master's. So I left and I got my master's completed at Teachers College in that 6 months, and then came back in the Nick Jr. Development Department as a consultant.
Got it. And how did your parents feel?
I think my mother didn't talk to me for like 3 weeks. She was like, benefits, you're like going towards the corner office, all that stuff that we were doing. I borrowed from my 401k to go back to school. Like I did all the things you weren't supposed to do.
How did Greg feel about it?
And Greg was like, we have no kids. Like this is when you need to be doing this. Like let's go, try, go, jump. Yeah.
The amount of time that it took you to now be in the room to the amount of time that it took you to have your own show is remarkably short. It's sort of unheard of. Now, I do want to give people who don't know context, which is this was a time of great growth. You didn't have to try hard to get growth. It was falling from the sky. However, what you did, which was leap from this camp of research to this camp of creative, is very, very unheard of. Growth, normal. This leap, no. How did this happen?
I was in the room when they were wanting a signature game show for Nick Jr. Double Dare was huge. Nickelodeon had that. Nick Jr. wanted something that really said who they were. So they were looking at game shows. And that idea of interacting, right? I used to talk to Mr. Rogers. My brother was kicking at Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. That idea of participating was really interesting to me. But everything that was being pitched were relay races or like clickers and Jeopardy. Do you remember all of that stuff? And I was in the room again with my like Bronx/Jersey chutzpah, like this is awful. I didn't say that, but I was thinking it. And Brown Johnson, amazing, said, well, what would you do?
So wait, did she know that you were unhappy?
Well, she could see it all over my face. I was like...
So you did, yes, so you did not say, but you
I did,
emoted. Okay, so she said...
What would you do? And I was like, give me a minute. Let me think. Thank you. And 2 weeks later, I came back in with a research paper, which, thank you very much, research at the center of everything. That was about hide and seek and about how the kids at home could be the participants in this kind of game show. It was very vague and really just had the principles of why kids would play in this way. And she absorbed and said, okay, what's the story? What's the show? What's the characters? And I was like, give me 2 more weeks. Right. So I did that, and it was funny because when I left, everyone in the area was like, oh, good try. And I'm like, oh, I'll be back. Give me another minute. I'll be back. Yeah.
So you came back with what?
I came back and it was a live action person in an animated world with an animated sidekick who could be the preschooler who could jump in and play the games as the token of the game board. And I don't know if I said kindergarten readiness skills at the time, but the games would be all things that kids needed to know before they went to kindergarten, but they were all games that kids would want to play, basically. She had a director that was working there at the time, Todd Kessler, who she trusted, and he read it, and I called him on a Saturday because he took it home, and I was like, what do you think?
You called him on a Saturday?
Yeah, and he was like, why are you calling me on a Saturday? I'm like, I cannot waste one moment. And he's like, I love it. Like, we need to try to figure out if we could make this. He said, okay, now we'll make a pilot, and for $5, really, no, it was not a lot of money. And we needed somebody, of course. Then the next piece was we needed somebody who was in production, in the design, all of that, to make the puzzle complete.
And who was that?
So that was Tracy Page Johnson, who is now co-creator of Gabby's Dollhouse as well, and she's done everything with me, like Daniel Tiger as well. And she came in and had 5 million ideas and had a memo also of all of her ideas of what she would do, because she had heard that this was a game show. And she had an animation of a beaver. It was a cutout beaver animation that she wanted it to be on Reading Rainbow, and it never got on it. She was working there at the time. And I was like, this woman is so creative, and she is going to blow up in 1 second. Like, we need her. I was like, I love her so much. And she wrote us a thank you note after this on a used pizza box. It was like oil-stained pizza box with Tracy's big, beautiful, the way she writes, this gorgeous Blue's Clues font. And I held it around.
I was there. I was a witness. There was this oily pizza box, and all of us were like, these research chicks are having the best time. Like, they were just like, it'll never happen. Just like, do whatever. And I do remember you prancing down the hall with the pizza box. And
like,
it was really cute.
Look at this. Oh my God, she's the best. Yeah. So she came on, and we all had other jobs that we were doing. We all had day jobs because no one thought this would go anywhere. But we had 6 weeks, I would say, at least, in a little conference room that we visit every once in a while. Nobody else was there. So Tracy and I would go in there, and we would write, and she would draw, and we would talk, and she would draw, and we would just kind of play. And then bring it into kids like 5 million times and just keep perfecting it and perfecting it.
So, friends, it was not easy. But Angela both found and got permission, and I think the finding was pretty easy and the getting permission was less easy. Very few people have seen the pilot that you are about to see.
Remember, it's 1994, 95. Steve was our guy from the very beginning, so he's still in there, but we have, I did his makeup, so we wanted to accentuate his eyes. Big eyes, expressive, get kids to talk to him, so you'll see that. Which is not the case later. And he is not wearing his classic shirt. He's wearing salmon color polo. The animation, everything looks very rudimentary. You'll see, it looks like we made it in our backyard.
And it was called?
Blueprints, because we were very serious that this was the blueprints to a child's development.
The fact that Steve is in here, what was that moment like when you met this person?
It was one of those things where the script is awful. When someone else is reading it, I'm listening to the script and I'm like, this isn't going to go anywhere. Like, this is awful. Oh my God. Oh my God. And then Steve walked in and he was so funny. It was like he lived inside my head. He would lean too far into the camera. I was talking back to him like I was a preschooler, and I start to cry. I'm like, oh my God. So of course he thought he did terrible and was like, this is ridiculous. She's crying in the room. That's how he tells it. But he was so different and good and played, and all of that stuff that makes Nickelodeon so unique at that time too, is that play. And so he was just, we were like head over, he was it. But then had to convince everybody else. So it took a bit before this happened, but still.
Gotcha. Okay, let's roll this never before seen pilot.
This is our book because it made it classic and, evergreen.
Hi out there. It's me, Steve. Have you seen Blue, my puppy? Come on in. Hi. Come on in. We are so glad you're here today. Hey, Blue, look who's here. Blue? Blue? Hey, Blue, where are you? Can you help me today? What did you say? Can you help me call Blue? just do what I do. You gotta jump up and down. Blue, blue, blue. Stop your feet on the ground. Blue, blue, blue. Wave your hands while you sing. Blue. Now shake everything. Blue. With me and you and my dog Blue, we can do anything that we wanna do. We can do anything that we wanna do.
So when this got finished, after all of this, this coming together, how confident were you or not that this was going to ever be anything?
I mean, in my head, I had pictures everywhere of the shoot that we did. Every moment was documented. It had to happen. But the reality was there was no way this was going to happen. We had never done this before. And there were, we're always up against other shows. And the other shows had people would produce stuff before. They came in on budget. It's a big deal, as we know, when something can go. So I wasn't necessarily that confident. I knew that it was a great show. And I knew that it could, change the world. Or at least that's what I would say. I was hoping. But I didn't think that it would move.
So
forward.
It goes to testing, but you have the research team on your side.
Exactly. So I have my research team. It all
It's our
comes
girl.
full circle. So what was amazing about the research team is that they knew that preschoolers watch things over and over and over again, and so it was their idea to take a VHS tape and send it home with parents, both tapes, ours and the other show, and send it home and ask the parents what, how it went and all of that, and whether they interacted, and then the parents came in to also give some feedback. And what was amazing about that was that parents were coming in, and now I'm on the other side of the, one-way mirror, and they were like, don't take this away from me. I'll give you $500. Like, my kids are going to lose it if I take it. They've watched it 15 times in one day. And I was like, does anyone hear that? That's amazing. Amazing.
You also shared that the research team was clear that if you showed just the show, it was going to really suck. So can you share what they did for you, for the girl?
It's so quiet. And one of the things we did on the script was to put little keyframes on the script so everyone understood that the script was shorter and different in a lot of ways. But once the show was there, the researchers put a side-by-side of kids watching and the other side of the show so that when we presented it, you could see exactly how the audience would react. It was brilliant.
I can truly imagine, having been at the Greenlight table, how hard it would be to imagine how good it was without watching kids watch. So now you're going to pick up meeting. What happens?
I actually get to sit in that meeting because I had other jobs that I was doing there. And I was watching, this is one of my outer body experiences, because I'm watching this group of amazing women and men, everyone that was around the table that were green lighting and had the ability to do that. And they're having conversations about the shows. And the first one that was presented was the other show that they were presenting it and all the wonderful things. And I was sitting there and I was like, yeah, they're going to just let me down easy. Like, it's totally fine. You'll be okay.
Can I give a moment of context to say just how unusual it is to have any creator sit in that room? Like, you do not have creators in the room. So the fact that you had this other freelance job also speaks to the fact that they didn't think it was going to happen either. I
agree. I mean, I was still the researcher. Like, I think I was still, research girl there.
Yes.
Like, there really wasn't any. Exactly.
Sorry, keep going.
No, it's true. And then Linda Shupak, amazing woman, stood up at the table and said, I appreciate us talking about this other pilot, but can we all just agree that this Blueprints is going to be the biggest hit that we've ever seen? And I was like,
Linda Shupak.
And then, of course, everyone else started talking.
Linda Shupak was at the table. She was not the leading voice at the table, and I just love the image of this woman standing up and doing something brave and innovative and unexpected. And I think in a moment like this that we should all, we talk about innovation, we talk about being brave. This is an example. Then it explodes. Yes? Books and events and
10 years of my favorite time in the world with my favorite people. And we were all living to die by the sword. We drank the Kool-Aid. Everyone would say, if you come over to them, like, be careful. They sing when the mail comes, like, for real. Like, we were our people, and it was amazing. And yes, like, we were involved in all the other stuff, too, as we watched Nickelodeon do their magic, and we were able to look at the toys. We were able to give feedback on the books and do all that. It was amazing. Live show at Radio City Music Hall, all of it.
Yeah, it looked, at least from the outside, like utopia. So I want to pivot in the spirit of this interview to say, okay, so we're tracking your career. What is happening at home?
By this point, I'm married about 7 years, and we still kept putting off having kids and putting off having kids. And again, Greg and I both come from an Italian background, which I don't know. They were expecting a lot of kids. Greg was he was a creative director at NBC, right? So he had this big job as well, and we were going back and forth about it. And I remember this moment of like being on the floor and being like, I don't know. I want to make sure that I could be home, but this is so, this is my life. I love it so much, my work. And he said, what if I stayed home? And I was like, what? And he's like, no, really. And it was a moment that I'll never forget, like the most beautiful thing to happen to me, that support and to have someone believe in you like that. And also, like, he was less type A, so he could just throw the babies on his back and go to Central Park, whereas I would have had to, like, make sure everything was all set up. So it was just a really beautiful back and forth.
It's amazing. I mean, the man behind the woman. And I just want to acknowledge, if this were gender reversed, we would not be oogling. So let's give Greg credit and also acknowledge that many women
Absolutely.
do this. How soon between Greg saying, I'll do this, and getting pregnant? Not to be personal.
Like 2 months, like done.
I have a treat. I asked Angela to send me a picture of Greg. Cue the Greg. On the left is what Angela sent me. That's the Upper West Side. And I actually called Greg, and I'm like, she sent me something way too glamorous. Can you please send me the real Greg? And he did. Now you have babies at home. You have this huge baby at work. How did you do it all?
It's the power of our community and all of us coming together and integrating, right? So we had actually a few of us were having kids at the same time. And so that flexibility was so key, and that it takes a village moment was so real for us. And a lot of us lived up in the Upper West Side. So we would take the Uptown bus, which really was a cab that we would all get in and share. We would get home for bath time and story time and dinner and all of that stuff. So it was early. We were leaving production early by 5 o'clock. And so we would do all of that. They'd go to bed by 7:30, because these were our first kids. So they did what we wanted them to do. And then second kids went crazy. And then we would have meetings. Then we would switch houses, and we would meet up again, to talk about the season, to talk about scripts, to do creative.
And it was before Zoom, so you were doing this in
person.
person.
In person, yep.
And was there food and drink?
Wine, lots of wine.
It does sound utopian, and it was incredible. And you also shared how incredibly difficult it was when that ended.
Oh yeah, I lost my identity. Like, I didn't quite know what I was doing. I remember first thinking, like, this wasn't even a job. Like, what do you mean? Like, what? Say that one more time. We're not doing anymore? So
It had been 10 years, yeah?
10 years, and I'm so proud of everybody, because I have to just give a shout out to everyone that worked with us in that space, went on to create their own shows and be amazing directors in their own right and running companies, and amazing. And so, yeah, I was going to miss the people. I was going to miss all of it. And I remember Linda Semensky coming in. She used to work with us at Nickelodeon, went over to PBS. She walked in, and she said, we were like, so sad. She said, well, I'm looking for a reading show. And I said, oh, it's funny. My master's thesis at Teachers College was a reading show. And she's like, well, can I see it? And I was like, sure. And I handed it to her. She's like, do you want to read it again? I'm like, no, you can just take it. And we were so sad. So then I'm like, all right, a couple months go by, you forget. And I'm like grocery shopping. I have all my groceries. I'm walking in, and I get a phone call, and it's Linda. And she says, if you're still interested in working with us on Super Why, we would like to order 65 episodes. And I dropped everything on the floor. And I was like, I'm back. Like, wow, we could do this.
And I asked you the question, and I loved your answer, so I'm going to ask you again. The name of your new company.
Oh, it was Out of the Blue.
And
After
what are
the
its
song that I wrote for kids. No, I'm just kidding. Well, yeah, I mean, definitely out of the Blue's Clues, of course. I would never have been able to do anything without Blue's Clues. I'm still holding on to those clues forever. And, this being sad and figuring out something else and, kind of making good and going up. Yeah.
I like it. So suddenly you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's different. What's it like to run a company now?
All of those things of wanting a family, everything that Jerry Laybourne taught us was what we tried to do in the studio with Blue's Clues and then try to bring over. So we were there. I wanted people who, thank you, worked with us for 16 plus years. And that's what we wanted. And so that pressure to make sure everyone was consistently working, which as we know in production is up and down. So that was a big deal to keep that going. We were working on Super Why. And that was also, as people know today, like it's hard to just do one show and keep a company running for 10, 12, 15 years. So we eventually started to add more shows to our repertoire, but it was such a gift when we look back what it was like to kind of really focus in and immerse ourselves on 1 or 2 shows.
With Angela's approval, I reached out to a few people who she worked with for all these years, and I was like, tell me a little. I was actually having a little bit of a hard time getting from Angela. She's large and in charge, but she's also very modest. And so I was reaching out to people and saying, like, what was it like? And they said so many amazing things, but one really stuck out when you were with Out of the Blue, and I hope I don't butcher the story, but basically they're in this office that apparently has terrible wiring, and they loved microwave popcorn. But the problem is that any time the microwave was used, all the computers would die. And so the thing was, guys, I'm gonna make popcorn, please save all your documents. And then they figured out, though, that the way around it was if they turned off the lights, they could pop the popcorn and save the scripts. So the thing I got back was like really scrappy, really working hard.
But look, everyone was okay with it. They stayed with us for 16 years. It was fun, right, Sarah?
So I want to pivot to what I believe is your, if you have 2 babies at home and Blue's Clues is your baby, Daniel Tiger, I think, is an opus. Can you tell us how that happened?
You know, when Blue's Clues was big, I talked about Fred all the time, right? He was the first to look to the camera and ask kids questions. He was a pioneer in so many ways. And so I got to meet his team, and then I got to meet him. And I went to set, and we were friends. And, you know, there was a lot of back and forth about child development and what he saw in Blue's Clues. My inner child was just doing somersaults, like loved this moment. But then unfortunately, after he died, the team also reached out and said, you know, he did not like anything that was on TV for kids, but he liked your show. So would you do anything to promote his legacy? I was like, oh my God, yes, give me a minute. But one of the things I won't do, though, is I don't want to find another Fred. Like, we can't, Fred's not someone that you can hire. So if we can do animation of the neighborhood and also pay tribute to his main street in real life and have all the characters grow up and have little preschoolers of their own, we have a show. And Daniel Tiger was Fred's first puppet, so Daniel Tiger was my favorite, and so he ended up becoming our main character.
What I find so amazing about Daniel Tiger is it's deceptively simple. It is simple storytelling, but the takeaways are so nuanced. The social emotional learning is so nuanced. And I'm curious if you can share how you do that and what you're looking for out of a takeaway.
Yeah, so Fred's, all of his music we were allowed to use as inspiration, and then also his socio-emotional curriculum and learning. The way he does things was a very specific way. So in order to honor that, what I thought is that we needed these little life lessons to be done in musical strategy so that kids, the way they can sing the ABCs, they can actually sing these problem-solving life lessons, right? Can we get them to do that? And so our research team, our writers, our producers were very invested in that. And so we would write and then take it into kids and see if it was working. And we did it probably 20 times back and forth. And then we thought we had it. And it was the first episode about disappointment. It was Daniel's birthday cake, and he wanted to carry it home himself. And so he's carrying it home himself. And of course, when he gets home, it's smushed and he cries and he's disappointed. And the strategy is when something seems bad, turn it around and find something good. And Dad Tiger says, well, what's good about all cakes? And then Daniel says, they taste good. So they tasted it. So when we post-tested and we asked kids what they would do if they were disappointed, turn it around and taste it. No, not working. No. So we went back in a few times, and what we found is that we did 2 11-minute stories of the exact same strategy, but different stories, different takeaways, many different examples of what you could do if you're disappointed. So then at the end of that, we celebrated because they said, turn it around and find something good. We're like, yes, that's it. Yeah.
So I want to do quickly how you decided to sell to 9 Story, what that was like, and how you knew it was time to leave.
We were already doing Daniel Tiger together. We were already doing Creative Galaxy together. We loved the talent. We loved their directors. They really understood everything. They understood our notes, all of our notes. So we really had created a bunch of things together. And then they had such synergies in terms of international distribution, things that we, as a small company who could barely keep the popcorn going, we got that figured out. But anyway, that we would have. And so it was a beautiful kind of coming together of all of the things that we all did. And it was amazing. We got a beautiful new space. We had so many shows. Over 5 years, we got 14 shows picked up. We were, grew. We had 60 of us just in New York, let alone Toronto and Dublin and everywhere. And COVID hit, and, trying to keep everybody going in COVID. And as we all know, like, it was just so hard and everything changing, and there was just a lot going on. And then I think the decision to leave, part of it is immersing myself in specific shows like Daniel Tiger or Blue's Clues or Super-Y. Those are the ones that are 25 years later, we're rebooting. Like, we're doing more Super-Y shorts, we're doing more Daniel, we're doing more Blue's Clues. And when there were so many, it was harder to kind of keep that going, and also from that happiness or that joy. But the biggest thing was that my mother was dying during that whole time. She died at 75. And so I had a moment of, what if I only have 20 years left to live? What do I want to do? It just kind of changed my perspective of how I wanted to work and how I wanted to immerse myself.
And it was a huge decision, and it's recent. It was a year ago.
It was pretty recent,
yeah. I thought that we could round out right before Q&A on what's going on literally right now, because this has been a journey. We're going to celebrate that yesterday, one of the shows that you've been working on for 5 years launched, yes? Can you set it up, and can we watch Dee and Friends, which just launched yesterday on Netflix?
Dee and Friends in Oz. It's inspired by, of course, The Wizard of Oz, but for preschoolers who are way too scared to be watching this. Even when they do, but they come every year dressed as Dorothy for Halloween, and I just wanted to make sure that we could give them something that was a musical adventure, sophisticated, beautiful, that was for them. And so, yes, it took 5 years, and it launched on Netflix yesterday.
That's Miss Emerald! Time for me to go to Oz!
Dee and her friends are out somewhere new. Take a leap. Oz is waiting for you.
Let's go. Dee and her friends in Oz. Adventure isn't far behind. Let's see some friends and make some new ones too. The story's hero is you.
Dee and friends in Oz.
Yeah.
Dee and friends in Oz.
Yeah.
Dee and friends in Oz.
Also today, you have written a book, and it is publishing today. Can you tell us about it?
I just used to keep a notebook of things that I thought were really important to remember. We do so much research, we dig so hard, we try to answer all those questions, and for kids. And what I start to realize is how much my adult kids still need to hear these messages, right? How great it would be to remind myself, to remind us of the simplicity of what it's like to nurture your inner child with a preschool child-centered point of view. And it brings me more joy when I do that, when I can remember to look at the holiday season through those eyes versus through the stressy, crazy eyes that I sometimes have. And I just think these are lessons that we all need.
I read it. It's fantastic. We used to have them saying, like, better living through television, like in the 50s. Like, this is like better living through television lessons that we all learn by making television. It's amazing. I'm really nervous about this next moment because I've never done this before. I want you to look under your chairs, and if you oh, there's a paw. This was Susie's idea. All people with paws under their chairs. You get a book. So Angela will also be signing books. Before we go to Q&A, which I really, really want to get to, because there are old people and young people in this room, and because Blue's Clues is truly one of the only shows that has an intergenerational audience. Kids who became parents, whose kids watch the show. You want to share a beautiful piece on Blue's Clues' 25th anniversary, which was about a year ago.
Still fits, kind of. Oh! Hey!
It's you! Hey, Joe, come here. Look who it is.
Oh! Hey!
It feels like just yesterday. Blue first asked us to play. Striped shirt, notebook.
But that wasn't all it took. Through the seasons, through the years, there's a reason we are here. For every clue and every song, someone's been there all along.
Through rain and sunny days, yeah. Who was always on the case, yeah. Ooh. You can't spell blue without you. You were always there, and you. Every time we shared a clue, every single Blues could do. We learned to use our minds, and we took a step at a time, and we made our mark, but we knew you Remember when we went to space and Blue Stock was so amazing? Holidays, present time.
Superheroes flying by.
Yeah.
Sitting down in our thinking chair, and mailbox always meets us there, and
Tickety, slippery.
magenta too, and
Oh, remember her first glasses?
I sure do.
We had birthday parties.
Pajama parties.
Kids were born.
Oh, don't get me started.
Cinnamon and paprika were so cute.
I had a duck. Yeah, I had hair.
Oh, and
Oh, yeah, the song.
you were always there, and you. Every time we shared a clue, every single blue said you. We learned to use our minds, and we took a step at a time, and we made our mark, but we knew that we owe it all to you. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. 'Cause you can't spell blue without you.
Everybody's crying. Who has a question for Angela?
What was one of the best learnings you took from Nickelodeon?
Kids First, I think, was the number one. Jerry Laybourne believed in kids and research. What would you say?
Hire people that you want to have dinner with. That's a Tom Aschheim quote. There are certain people that you would want to have lunch with. They're pretty good. But if you hire great people who you'd actually want to have dinner with, you're going to have a great company. And that is what Jerry did. And what's good for kids is good for business. Donna.
What advice would you give this industry at this moment, given that it's a harder time right now?
It's about making sure that what you're working on you absolutely love and that you run into the house for it. If anything ever happens, that's what you would grab. If the door is not open, that you will persist and you will be resilient and you will be flexible in this crazy splintered media landscape right now. And that strong vision is the guide, is the lightning. Sometimes things just don't happen when they're supposed to happen. So it takes longer sometimes, and then that's okay.
If I may add, I would say be Linda Shupak. Really. If you have the power to help other people who are scared to take a risk, be Linda Shupak. She was not the most powerful voice in the room. She stood up and she's like, I think we should go here. Most of us are not the most powerful people in the room, but power is not your title. So that's my feeling. Yeah.
Given the research you've done on children, is there any content you're worried about in the industry today?
That's where we all kind of hold hands and coming together, right? In terms of parents watching with kids to make sure that the questions are answered around the content, just so that we're offering that advice.
Starting with Blueprints and then iterating to Blue's Clues, at what point do you know when to redirect yourself?
Great question, because there's certain things that you really have to hold on to, of course, but then there are things that, you really need to lean in. And so for this, the research team said, it doesn't matter what you call it, kids are going to call it Blue's Clues. So it's like it was out of our hands.
Also, what other people have said about Angela is that she's very strong and powerful, but she also knows who the boss is, and it's the kids, and that she's not afraid to be wrong. Oh, okay, yeah.
Hi, this is so exciting. She's like my Madonna. But anyway, what was the most shocking insight? They were like, that wasn't intuitive, but this is what I learned.
That kids are so smart that they just kept wanting more. So sometimes we just came in with something and they were like, yeah, we know this. What about this? And you were like, oh, all right, we're going to go there. It's always shocking when you think that you've got it and then they just keep wanting more and to push it further.
One more question.
In development around preschool series, we're hearing the words like toyetic and play patterns, and that doesn't seem like a concept that you took into consideration. It seems like you wanted to make just amazing characters that make people happy, and the toys come second.
Yeah, I think brand and brand franchise is definitely buzzword. Our job is to give them content on the show for their imaginations. In toy, you make sure you have a team that understands what you're doing and how you're doing it so that those toys have clues in them, education in them, have little messages for parents, like things that you can do to help elevate, because the truth is, kids are playing. We want them to play in their imaginations with our stuff, and then the success of that enables us to do more shows.
Angela was like worrying that she may have 20 more years to live. And I was like, no. You have at least 40 and you're going to be working all of them. So I asked her to answer this question. Let's assume it's 40 years from now. You are now 95. We are at your retirement lunch. We're not doing dinner. We're very tired at this point. What are you saying about all the stuff that connects all you've done in the past and then the 40 years that are going to come in the future.
So hard. I hope that I'm still giving kids a voice, a seat at the table. I'm still representing. I hope I'm still innovating. And I hope that there's always that kindness foundation. Everything that I do, you can see it.
All right, I say let's give you 40 more years.
Thank you.
Let's say thank you.
Thank you. You are awesome. Can we thank Amy? You're amazing. Thank you.
We have a reception in ballroom 15. We will, as Amy said, providing alcohol. So join us, and thank you for being a part of the Red Chair.